There are 7 billion people on our planet. Every one of us has a voice that is unique, an expression of us. And it's the only musical instrument that comes built in. I'm Antonio Pappano. All my life I've been surrounded by wonderful singing. In fact, my father was a voice teacher. As a conductor, it's been my good fortune to work with some of the best singers there are. I'm on the stage of the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, my musical home, and home to all the great operatic stars, past and present. In this program, I'm going to meet the kings of the high C, the world's greatest tenors since recording and moving pictures began. The tenor is the glamour boy of opera, the romantic hero, the leading man. What puts a tenor on his pedestal? What techniques does he use to produce that sound? I'll be talking to some of the great singers of today, working with them, in fact, to find out some of the tricks of the trade. How do they do it? How does the throat work? How does the breathing work? The body, the soul. In the 1990s, the tenor, or rather 3 of them, became the toast of the whole planet with a series of gargantuan concerts staged at 3 World Cup finals. Jose Carreras, Placido Domingo, and Luciano Pavarotti brought opera back into the fabric of mainstream culture in a way that hadn't been the case since the 1950s.
Why 3 tenors? Because the kind of repertoire 3 tenors can sing, only 3 tenors can do. Composers wrote the most beautiful tunes for the tenor voice.
There is no other voice type that creates such an animal response from audiences to the degree that the tenor voice does. There's something unnatural about it, high wire, if you like. Will he make the high note? Will he get through the part? Will the character he plays even make it to the end of the opera? The tenor may get the girl, but the 2 rarely end up living happily ever after. The flawed heroes the tenor sings have a high body count in opera. Living and dying for love, for revenge, for their dark obsessions. From the young romantic lead to the tragic hero, the tenor portrays masculinity in all its guises. The most famous tenor of the last 50 years, he is still many people's idea of the larger-than-life Italian tenor, was of course Luciano Pavarotti. Pavarotti grew up steeped in the Italian tenor tradition. He was born in Modena in the north of Italy in 1935, the son of a baker. His father was a gifted amateur tenor who gave up his own dream to become an opera singer because of stage fright. Luciano cut his teeth singing in church choirs with his father. Pavarotti went on to sing at all the great opera houses, but his superstardom came from his voice on record. In Britain, his recording of Nessun Dorma was used as the theme of the Italian World Cup coverage in 1990. Then an aria little known outside the opera house, sung with an uncompromising operatic technique, Nessun Dorma reached #2 in the UK singles charts. Such was the pull of the star tenor. In our times, Pavarotti singing Nessun Dorma has become legendary. And there are many clips of him singing this aria, but I like this one in particular because he's very, very focused, and you can see the mechanics, the full-throated, open-throated high register. You'll know what I mean when you see it. And the clear, clear diction. Of his mouth is quite big, but not so big. There's a famous high note coming at the end, and so he's not giving the whole show away. And this is very important, very disciplined. Known for his acting, Pavarotti, but actually, I have to say that he doesn't need to do much. And he convinces me completely. Now listen to this. Forwardly projected. Nice and round. Now watch the mouth opening. That's how you achieve that. When Pavarotti marked 30 years in the business with a free concert at Hyde Park, 100,000 people turned up to see him in the flesh, even though it rained all day. Luciano Pavarotti did so much for opera in his heyday. I consider him, and give me a little leeway here, but I consider him like a Muhammad Ali of the music world, because somehow opera in the 80s and the 90s needed a figure, a symbol that defined opera as something worthwhile, as something absolutely fabulous. But the tenor voice is perhaps the most unforgiving of all the voices. You need a rock-solid technique for this kind of extreme singing. As I'm about to find out for myself with one of Britain's leading singers. Now, even though I'm the son of a voice teacher, I never took a proper voice lesson in my life. And for my sins, I'm going to have one this morning, and my vocal teacher is none other than Sir Thomas Allen, and I feel very, very privileged. You're the boss, Tom.
I'm the boss on this occasion.
But don't get used to it.
Let's think of G major to start with, anyhow. to me as though when you take the breath, if you're having the breath, you're standing rather rigidly like this. Ah! Relax the whole thing. The best singers I've seen are the ones that look most relaxed on stage. I mean, I used to sit in your house alongside Pavarotti, listening to him singing Bohème. I'd forget certain lines I had to sing because I was just absolutely astonished at what this man did. And it was so easy. It was just taking in the breath, sitting on it. And then the mechanism just kicked in. I mean, the breath, once it's taken in, is just turned around and put out again. But now it's got flowers and embroidery on it. But it's a simple intake of breath and then relax. Ah, 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 ah. And it comes right down to here. Ah, can we get a really bright ah? If you just shouted me, ah! Yeah. That's better. You see, because as far as I'm concerned, singing is just cultured shouting. It's shouting with music on it, with notes attached. Otherwise, how on earth could we reach the people that we do? It just has... If I were to shout now, as you did just then, I could turn the shout into music as I go along. And it becomes a note rather than just something shouted.
Then all you have to do is put that all together in front of 2,000 people.
In Barber, it's difficult music. Technically, you have to be prepared, but if you are, then it's such a wonderful feeling. It's about your breathing working at its utmost, and the control of that breathing, the fine-tuning of that breathing in order to make all the nuances and in order to finish a phrase.
The tenor as we know him today was a 20th century invention. One man revolutionized the way the tenor sang, and in so doing made himself one of the most famous people, never mind famous tenors, in the whole world. So idolized was he that he was even signed up for a movie, a silent movie. The poster boy for opera was paid the eye-watering sum of $100,000. And you couldn't even hear him sing. He was Enrico Caruso. Enrico Caruso. Perhaps the most important name in all opera. Just saying that name gives me a chill because there's no question that by any measure, this is the greatest singer of the 20th century. Caruso's life could have been an opera. The man who went on to top the bill at the Metropolitan Opera was born in Neapolitan poverty. Sent out to work at 10, he began singing for tips in waterfront bars. Puccini, when he heard Caruso sing La Bohème, told him he'd been sent by God. Caruso was perfect for the new operatic movement that Puccini and other Italian composers were fashioning. Verismo, or realism, called for a tenor hero who was believable and, above all, manly and vocally fearless. Caruso introduced a new spirit and power that changed the perception of the tenor voice.
Before Caruso was most mannerism, etc. After Caruso, it was more the real thing. In that sense, he was the very first modern tenor.
One can follow the development of his voice. As a young man, he had a light lyric voice, almost a frivolous voice. But if you listen to his voice, he developed so that it became one of the richest, virile, I would say almost menacing voices in opera history. In 1904, Caruso recorded the first ever million-selling record. Here's his own caricature of the experience. The fact that someone of his stature had recorded successfully led the other great singers of the day to follow suit. What had been a toy now became a must-have, and Caruso created an oral encyclopedia of tenor technique. Over 200 recordings. And every tenor since has listened for secrets to learn from this man. And if they say they haven't, they're all lying. What Caruso bequeathed was, above all, a new darkness and richness in the lower and middle registers of the tenor voice. One way to assess the unique qualities of the tenor voice is to compare it to the baritone voice. Now, the baritone voice is the next down on the vocal spectrum, and in fact, there are only 3 or 4 notes in range between those two voices. But how different they are in color. The tenor voice possesses something which is in Italian called squillo, or ring. And there's a plangent, I think it's a thrilling, exciting, high sound that just wants to climb.
You have to have the high notes, you have to have the low part, you have to have the metal to pass over the orchestra, you have to have the velvet.
Interesting word, metal. The combination of hard and soft, high and low, that sets the tenor apart.
Un solo istante I palpiti del suo bel cor sentì.
This a combination of adolescent sound and the male sound, a mature man sound. I think awakes in people this emotion of this guy is a very young guy, is a teenager, but at the same time, he is a mature man in the sound. And a baritone is just a mature man in the sound, which wonderful, but I think, in my opinion, I was thinking about many times about it, that this is what creates such fascination for the tenor voice.
So beautiful and so affecting, a one-in-a-million voice. But let's go higher. Hitting the high notes is the tenor's stock and trade. As audience members, it's what we want, it's what we crave. Now, the fabled high C in particular can make or break a tenor's career. Now, true, there are several high-profile names that have made a career without this high C. But if you listen to this example from Donizetti's The Daughter of the Regiment, where you'll hear in this example 4 high Cs in a string of 9, it's better if the tenor has the high C.
A Mes Amis is a champagne aria, but if you tried, before when you arrived in the dressing room, or in the, when you had some time and they were not so perfect, then you worry, because that's not a high C day. But if they are good, you go, easy.
The high C defines the tenor today. But the way it's sung, the technique that produces it, is actually a relatively recent arrival on the music scene. In the 17th and 18th centuries, most of the heroic male roles would have been sung by the castrati. Yes, it's what you think. Now, the hormonal goings-on post-SNP would have created a voice that would have seemed bizarre to us today. In one way, it was masculine, tremendous lung power. The chests of these singers were enormous. But in the high register, the voice was something akin to a turbocharged falsetto or head voice, a very bizarre whooping sound even, something needed to happen. And it did in the 19th century. Now, it's rare in the history of music that you can point to one defining incident when a revolution occurred. But with the tenor voice, you can. The year was 1831. The composer Rossini, the opera William Tell. The singer who changed the tenor's fortunes overnight, Gilbert Dupré. Before Gilbert Dupré came along, tenors would sing the high C in this kind of voice. Not too exciting, perhaps, but Gilbert Dupré had other ideas.
He was a young, promising tenor who learned the voix sombrée. That meant to sing with a real voice. And in the dressing room, he was trying these high notes because there's a lot of high Cs. And he tried the high C with a natural chest voice, which is such a landmark, and it revolutionized opera. And Rossini was disgusted.
Rossini said it sounded like a capon having its throat cut.
The audience loved it, and they cheered Dupré as the Messiah.
After Dupré, the thrilling chest voice high C was eagerly anticipated by the audience. The tenor doesn't sing that many of them, but get it wrong and you could be booed off the stage.
We go on the stage every night with the same feeling. We are afraid. And if somebody tell you this, tell you who is not afraid, it means he's a liar.
It's like the circus, the trapezist without net. And it's somehow like this. I'm telling you, when you are on stage and you have to sing a high C, already 2 days ago you don't sleep.
Despite Rossini's objections, this unthinkable but wholly possible new approach to the top of the voice becomes unstoppable. By the time we get to the Verdi operas, the tenor voice as we know it today becomes recognizable. This new masculine, heroic approach to singing took hold. From his first opera in 1839 to his last, 54 years later, Verdi was Italian opera. He created a whole series of tragic tenor heroes in the romantic mold, dynamic, impulsive, and fatally flawed. An ideal Verdi hero was Franco Corelli, who emerged in the 1950s as one of the most celebrated of all Italian tenors. Corelli trained as a naval engineer before entering a singing competition on a dare. Good call. Corelli cut a dashing figure. He even developed a sideline modeling evening wear for style magazines. And he certainly attracted the female audience. He had good old-fashioned sex appeal. The most glamorous tenor of the 20th century was undoubtedly Franco Corelli, the Italian tenor who, I think, created an image of the tenor, even before Pavarotti, that would influence everything that came after him. Tremendously good-looking, he drove audiences into delirium. Listen to him here singing Puccini in one of his signature roles, Cavaradossi, a prisoner dreaming of happier times. The tone was very personal to him. Every inch the romantic hero. Quite old-fashioned acting style. The darkness of that quality and that lower register. So musical he was. See that low larynx. Watch the larynx. And in one breath, fabulous. Dominating the orchestra. That's unusual for the tenor to turn around. Best old-fashioned tradition, the sobbing, the applause getters. Now that tenors were expected to hit the high C using the chest or natural voice, a problem emerged. And this is something that tenors have to deal with on a daily basis. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the tenor range spans 2 octaves normally, from C to C. Some singers can sing lower, some can sing higher, but basically that's it. Now, if I start to sing from the low C, as I get towards the middle, my voice runs out. Now, what happens here is something, it's a natural phenomenon, and it creates the need for some kind of manipulation. We need to create a bridge from the lower voice, through the middle voice, through to the high voice. And this is called a passaggio, or a passage, or a bridge, or some, you get the idea. And the manipulation that takes place is, oh, the voice is made slightly smaller so that then you can go up, oh. Now, I'm not an expert in this, obviously, but you could hear how going small around E or F, the upper middle, all of a sudden, then there's room to expand into the top register. Now, without this knowledge, without the mastery of this, you cannot have a major operatic career. Everyone from Caruso to Mario Lanza to Pavarotti to Jonas Kaufmann, all were and are masters of the passaggio. So if you want to be a tenor, it's something you simply have to learn.
When you think of singing a song, it'll have high moments, it'll have middle moments, and those lower notes as well. And when we get into the upper parts where the money is made, then it goes up into the head, and we negotiate through the chest and into the head, through the passaggio, into high, and then you do really feel the buzz that's in there. Let's do the scale. That's where now we're dealing with passaggio, because there are other muscles then start to kick in. There are the muscles that deal with the voice and the larynx and everything else when it's in that lower position, in the lower registers. And then we have to deal with this thing that every singer deals with, the passaggio, as to how you get through that bridge.
Like a bridge.
It's a bridge. It's like a frontier in a way, a muscular frontier, and you've got to get through it.
It felt okay, actually.
Yeah, for me, it's around E flat and E natural. After that, you go into another field, and it changes again.
That's how passaggio works in principle. The whole art for the tenor is to manage to cross the frontier without the audience being aware he's done so. Here's Jonas Kaufmann negotiating the passaggio in a performance of Andrea Chenier seamlessly.
Bella, d'un poeta non disprezzate il detto, udite, non ne conoscete amor, e fino nello sternire il mondo, anima e vita
Right now we're in the middle of performances of Andrea Chenier, and in your first aria, there's, I think, a classic example of going through the passaggio, and you go non conoscete amor, which is an F, which is right in the passaggio, and then you go to a high B flat, where you need lots of room.
non conoscete amor.
Well, F is for me, it's actually the note where I'm indecisive, let's say, whether it belongs to the upper or to the lower region. And there's one note in second act, sia soldato, And I'm never sure, in every performance I do it differently, because also depending on the form of the day, it just comes differently. And, but I think the more you think about it, the more difficult it becomes.
Tu sarai poeta, a un altro, a te una spada, si soldato.
One of the holy grails of singing is how do you diminuendo, how do you get softer on the tone that is loud to begin with?
Yeah.
Now you have an amazing ability to do that. Can you show us
I
one?
can try.
And you can try.
Oh.
Vicino al sol, un trono vicino al sol, un trono vicino al sol.
How do you do that? How do you do that? No, seriously, how do you do that?
The larynx is low, the tongue is, the whole mouth, everything is relaxed.
You
It's
did it
always
perfect. You went, so it goes through F. Again, similar to Chenier. Trono vicino al sol.
Trono vicino al sol.
Back and forth.
it's the same thing.
The technical aspect of it is absolutely mind-boggling, because usually it's only one or two people in the world, and you know, at a time could do that, but you can do it. The basic techniques are common to all tenors, but within the category we call the tenor lies a whole spectrum of different colors, ranging from the dark dramatic tenor at the lower end of the frequency to the lyric tenor at the higher. This lighter voice is ideally suited to the young, naive, romantic lead. Tamino in Mozart's The Magic Flute is a famous example. One of the role's most admired interpreters is the great German lyric tenor Fritz Wunderlich, who died at the age of only 35 after a fall in a hunting lodge in 1966. The youthful, light timbre perfectly captures the hero's yearning for a princess he sees in a picture. You hear the perfect balance of ardor and vocal refinement and good taste.
Dies Bildnis ist bezaubernd schön, wie noch kein Auge je gesehen.
Every syllable in place, and yet the smoothest of deliveries.
Wie dies Götterbild mein Herz mit neuer Regung füllt. Mein Herz mit neuer Regung füllt.
Perfect intonation, just perfect. Now we have difficult vowels in German, the Ü and the tight E vowel, constantly going in and out of that difficult passaggio, but it's nothing for him. Ooh, beautiful. And then there's the contrast. See how many E vowels there are in this aria, which can potentially tighten the voice. but sound completely free with him. You could say that there's a matter-of-factness in the interpretation, in the delivery. A straightforwardness is probably a better way of saying it. But I think when you have a voice quality like that, and music that is so obvious somehow, so natural, you don't need to play around with it to make the effect. And Fritz Wunderlich knew this inherently, and I think that this is what makes him a great star in the pantheon of the greats. 100 years or so after Mozart, a completely different type of tenor emerged in Germany. He was the Heldentenor, the hero tenor, associated especially with the operas of Richard Wagner. Not only did the Heldentenor play superheroes on stage, in roles like Siegfried and Tristan, he had to sing for longer stretches than ever before, and the musical forces he was now competing against had been increasing in strength. In the 19th century, the orchestra grew and grew and grew. Where Mozart wrote for a 40-piece orchestra or less, by the time we get to Verdi, it's 60, and the biggest challenge is yet to come. When we perform Wagner's music, we're playing with 110 players. Now, you can imagine that this is a huge obstacle, if you like, for the singers. The amount of lung power and projection is exponentially greater. That's where technique comes in, the art of projection of resonance, this cutting through the orchestra with a beam of sound rather than a wall of sound is essential. A Heldentenor whose very personal technique allowed him to excel in singing these heavy dramatic roles is the Canadian John Vickers. A committed Christian, he tried only to sing operas and characters whose message he believed to be morally uplifting.
There seems to be something of great inner intensity in these characters. They're almost obsessive, almost driven characters.
I think that I have a certain ability to portray that intensity. I study the role in a very abstract, objective way, trying to analyze the facets of personality which are the predominant ones that must be brought forward. And I analyze the role in terms of finding the facets within my own personality that have to be enlarged or diminished or hardened or softened so that in a way I myself sort of die. And I suppose that it's probably because I build my characters from the inside out that they have this greater sense of commitment and intensity.
I've had the opportunity to work with John Vickers on 2 occasions, and there is simply no one like him. And he does draw you in, let me tell you. Listen to John Vickers singing the role of Florestan from Beethoven's Fidelio. The character is a prisoner, a political prisoner who's been alone in this dungeon for a very, very long time. No hope, despair. And these are the types of characters that John Vickers gravitated towards. Lonely, outcast individuals. You get an idea of the size of the voice now. How beautiful the voice actually was. register, almost like a baritone.
It was like listening to a cathedral organ. And he would seem to relax back onto the back foot and then take a posture, a position. It was as though he was ready to swallow a sword. But a sword swallower must be able to open up a passage that goes straight the way down. So consequently, there's this man standing like that, on the back foot and creating this column, this great column. And the whole body then becomes the voice. And the mouth opens up to a massive extent at times. And it becomes rather like an animal.
Ich seh wie ein Engel im rosigen Duft, ein Engel, sie stößt dann zur Seite.
How he pulls back his voice there, it's heartbreaking.
Ein Engel, Leonore, den Garten so gleich hier führt mich zur Freiheit, ins himmlische Reich, zur Freiheit, ins himmlische Reich, hier führt mich zur Freiheit, ins himmlische Reich, zur Freiheit, ins himmlische Reich, ins himmlische Reich, ins himmlische Reich.
And the light goes out. But did you notice the concentration in his eyes, the total focus, the absolute convincing thought process that's behind the singing? This is as important as the throat. This is as important as the God-given talent. It's how your mind accompanies your delivery.
I believe that singing is mainly about emotions. I mean, the artist that is able to color his voice and to give the right intuition, every sound to his, the role he's playing, I think this is a great artist.
Throughout musical history, composers have written for specific singers. Benjamin Britten wrote predominantly for his partner Peter Pears. Distinctively English in sound, Pears created some of the most significant new tenor roles of the 20th century.
The vocal pieces were written, so many of them with my voice in mind, that I could just try it out on him. And there, if he'd written a difficult phrase, I could just see whether I could sing it or not. And if I could adequately, he probably kept it in. If I couldn't or thought it was too difficult, I may be said to have vetted from my own point of view.
Beginning in the 1940s, the English operatic tradition, semi-dormant for more than 2 centuries, was revived by Benjamin Britten and Peter Pears, beginning with Peter Grimes. A fisherman suspected of murdering his apprentice, here is the tenor as pariah, under threat. Peter Grimes is the ultimate outsider, a strange, troubled man, despised by the small village mindset. What is fascinating is Peter Pears' best note was E natural. Other tenors have great difficulty with that note. It's just sort of not fish nor fowl. It's kind of upper low register, lower middle register, and it's a tricky note, but it's perfect in Peter Pears' voice, interestingly enough. And in Peter Grimes, Benjamin Britten writes an aria where E natural is the main feature, with a very elusive text. Now the great bear and Pleiades, where earth moves, are drawing up the clouds of human grief, breathing solemnity for the deep night. deep night, so word painting, Britten brings the voice way down low. Interesting how he makes music on that single note. He does it again here. Alliteration there, storm, starlight. It opens up. Piers shows us how to love the words. Whether one possesses the most beautiful voice or not, communication is paramount. The personality behind those voices can communicate something. The joy of singing, yes, but also something deeper. The greater meaning behind an aria, even a note, offering something completely new for us to experience. It's that rare ability to make everything you sing personal to you and unforgettable once heard that distinguishes the great singer from the good. One tenor who had personality, charisma, and star quality in spades went on to become one of the most influential singers of the 20th century. The first ever crossover artist hardly set foot on an opera stage, but he became one of the biggest movie stars of the 1950s by singing opera. Jose Carreras said that he got into singing because of this guy. The kid from Philadelphia influenced Placido Domingo. Pavarotti would go see his films and go home and try to imitate him in the mirror. Who am I talking about? Well, Mario Lanza, of course.
Now, friends, I don't want to waste a second of your time. I want to introduce to you a star of many opera stages and a great star of Hollywood, Mario Lanza.
Mario Lanza, unlike any classically trained tenor before or since, was genuinely successful as a pop star. Because You're Mine was a million-seller top 10 hit in both Britain and the USA.
Because you're mine, the brightest star I see looks down my love and envies me. Because you're mine, because you're
Mario Lanza was the most famous tenor there ever was, bar none, and together with Enrico Caruso, certainly the most influential.
He was inspiration for all of us. And also he did The Life of Caruso. It was the life of the greatest tenor ever, and it was a very interesting movie for people that we were not very, very familiar with opera at that moment.
When you hear him sing those honeyed tones and those very difficult phrases that go high, he manages them technically, absolutely wonderfully, going through the passaggio up to the high note, back through the passaggio, back up. The power of the modern tenor, ignited by Caruso, fueled by Mario Lanza, found new strength with the three tenors.
After I had the possibility to enjoy the movie with Lanza, I didn't want to be an instrumentalist or a conductor or I wanted to be a singer. And then I realized that my voice was a tenor voice, and I was very happy with that, and needless to say.
Three tenors, three different tenors, ranging from lyric to dramatic. The thrill of a unique and outstanding tenor voice has provoked an animal response from audiences for nearly 200 years, and in our century shows no sign of running out of steam. Next time, the voice type that gets to play the characters known in opera as witches, bitches, and britches. Between the tenor and the soprano sings the earth goddess, the mezzo-soprano.